welcome to the Rise to Reign podcast. I'm your host, Amy Killingsworth, and today we are completing our mini-series on social engineering, social priming, social programming, social conditioning. All ways of saying the same thing, which is basically an idea that a group of people are sort of masterminding and molding society in the way that they want to go for their own purposes. So I began the series, and if you haven't heard it, this is the third episode in a series of 2. So I'm wrapping up a mini series. So you can go back and listen to episodes 26 and 27, and this is episode number 28 to get the complete picture. But I began the first episode of the mini-series by asking the question, is it possible, could you make room in your thinking to consider the possibility that a small group of people are intentionally molding society through media, entertainment, education, government, medicine, healthcare, toward a expected and deliberate end? So we're going to talk about, in the first episode we talked about what is social priming, what is social conditioning, social engineering. The second episode we talked about how an individual becomes socially primed or socially conditioned. And today we're talking about the engineers, or the people behind the curtain, so to speak, or the masterminds. So let's say that there were a small group of people, maybe like a hidden ruling class, or maybe just a brilliant but unethical group of greedy marketers that understands the conditioning we talked about in last episode and seeks to exploit it and perpetuate it, because traumatized people starving for authentic connection, unconditional belonging, and unconditional love are easy to manipulate, control, and sell to. Okay, I'll repeat that. So let's say that there's a small group of people, maybe a hidden ruling class or regime, or maybe just brilliant but unethical and greedy marketers who understand human conditioning, and they seek to exploit and perpetuate it because traumatized people who are starved for authentic belonging, authentic unconditional love and connection are easy to manipulate, control, and sell to. Another way of saying that is that people who don't know who they are easy to be made to believe that they are much less than. So there's another story I want to tell here, and it's about an elephant. You've probably maybe heard it if you've been around any kind of self-development circles for any length of time. So a baby elephant, when it's born into the circus, or when the circus gets a hold of this baby elephant, is trained in a certain way by a chain around its foot that is tied to a stake that's driven into the ground, and it can't be moved with the strength that the baby elephant has. And anytime the baby elephant pulls against that the slack of that chain that's tied to it, the baby elephant is punished severely. So eventually the baby elephant really stops trying to pull against the chain. So later in life, when this giant elephant, which is arguably, I think, maybe the strongest mammal on earth, is tied up to this measly little stake in the ground, and it could easily just pull it out and go wherever it wanted and go do whatever it wanted to do, doesn't even try anymore. It doesn't even try to pull the stake out because it was conditioned in early childhood that it's A, futile, like it can't get away, and B, it brings punishment. Okay, there's another landmark study that if you have a psychology course of study, you'll read about, and it was a study done on dogs, and it explored the idea of like learned helplessness. And what happened was the dogs were trapped in a cage and they couldn't escape anywhere. The cage was locked down, they couldn't get out. And the floor of the cage would give them electric shocks. And so there was nowhere that they could go to get away from these electric shocks. So the poor dogs, I hate this study, I hate even thinking about it, but the poor dogs would whine and cry and defecate and just suffer on these electric shocks that were coming from the floor of the cage that they couldn't get out of. Well, later in the study, they opened the doors of the cages so that the dogs could get out. And guess what? They didn't even try. They could walk out the door of the cage, but they didn't even try. They just sat there and took the shots and continued to whimper and cry and suffer. So, and that is the concept of learned helplessness. It's like when I tried to help myself before, it resulted in pain or didn't work. And so I'm just a victim of my surroundings, and I'm not even going to try. So if you wanted to create a society of people who were slaves to an agenda but didn't know they were slaves, wouldn't it be brilliant to condition generations of people to deprive one another of the basic human needs of unconditional love and acceptance, so they turned on each other and divided into groups to fight for the only scraps of belonging that they could get their hands on? Okay, so wouldn't that be a really brilliant strategy to control a population of millions and even billions of people, is to play on and exploit that need for love and belonging, and to condition us to divide and deny one another unconditional acceptance, unconditional positive regard, unconditional love and belonging, and get us to separate into groups and say, you're in the group, you're out of the group, we're us, you're them. Well, to do this, you would execute very specific social cues that would trigger that desperate need to avoid rejection. You could create campaigns that maligned entire groups of people for not engaging in the narrative or the socially approved and accepted behavior. So what is an example of this going on right now? Well, if you'll notice, the cycles of the media go in waves, and there's a idea is presented, and there is a socially accepted norm. There's a socially accepted norm that is perpetuated by celebrities. It's perpetuated on the news. It's perpetuated by the experts and many of the politicians. And so when you see that going on, when you see the narrative, when you see the thing that everybody's getting behind, then you know that there is a agenda or a narrative at work. And so they're basically telling you what to be outraged about. They're telling you what side or what should be important to you. And there's all this extreme social pressure to get on the side of the majority, maybe, or the in group or the in crowd. Okay, so have you ever noticed that coordinated effort? I just want to think about that for just a second. Coordinated efforts between media, celebrities, government, social media influencers to provide the cues and let you know what's in and what's out. For so long, and still obviously still going on, it's like, get your vaccine and protect those most vulnerable, and this is what you do if you care about people, and this is what you do if you are the responsible member of society that wants to belong and wants to be seen as and to be acknowledged as responsible and loving and caring. And so you have to get your vaccine. Well, then that shifted. That's obviously still going on, but then that shifted to standing with Ukraine. And then everybody's expected to make a statement that they stand with Ukraine. And listen, I'm not here to debate the merits of any of this. I'm just wanting you to see the coordinated effort to tell you what the in thing is, to tell you what the appropriate response is. And I believe that it's even more about the conditioned response, the stimulus response, than it even is about the actual issue that's being conditioned in response. It's like a way to control your focus and the way to tell you what you should be outraged about, or what should be important to you, or what should pull on your heartstrings. And so when that coordinated effort's going on, you see things like catchy slogans, like "We're in this together." Cue the desire to belong. Or maybe the campaigns will play in our desire to participate in community or be a part of something larger than ourselves. That's a huge cue, right? That's a huge social cue. Everybody, we're created. We have this inborn, innate sense that we want our life to have meaning and we want our life to have purpose. And so we all want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves, a family, an organization, a cause, a mission. And so when you say something like build back better, like we're in this together and build back better, well, now our cause even has a slogan, and it connects us to something larger than ourselves. It even connects us to celebrities, right? So you see this class of people that have the life that maybe everybody else wishes they had. They have the money and the fame and the accolade and the lifestyle, and we kind of all wish that that's like the aspirational identity, like we all wish that we could be a part of that strata. And so when we do the thing, or when we join up with the philosophy or take that action, we get to connect ourselves with the cool kids. Like we get to be connected with the in crowd. Classic social perception, social programming, classic perception control, and social priming and social programming. So there could also be logos and colors. I'm actually looking at my Mac right now, and there's that windshield wiper Mac thing. It's a program called Clean My Mac, and it has a Ukrainian flag on it. And so Clean My Mac program software is coming onto my computer to let me know that they stand with Ukraine. And so you can change your social media profile picture to standing with Ukraine. And there's could be like a snappy logo, and there could be a snappy like frame around your social media, so you could identify yourself with that thing, with that cause, with the outrage du jour, or the thing that we're all standing with or giving our attention to. So that's the problem, but what's the solution? Okay, so the solution, as always, is self-awareness. So self-awareness is a superpower, because with self-awareness you can heal. When you see a pattern, it's sort of the beginning of the end of the pattern. And with self-awareness, you can begin to heal those patterns and start to choose intentionally. You can decide for yourself. You can exercise your sovereignty. You can take your sovereignty back, and you can begin to hold those two sort of competing ideas in your mind and wrestle with them and decide what's true. What do you truly believe? Like, not what has been spoon-fed to you, or what has been given to you, or what you have been told to think or feel or be outraged or be an activist toward. It's actually what is true for you, your own inner truth, and that comes with self-awareness. So if I was one of these engineers, if I was an evil mastermind who wanted to create a slave class, who incidentally didn't know they were slaves, but were mindlessly and unconsciously promoting what I wanted to see happen, an agenda for my own selfish purposes, which that might be greed. It's usually greed. Here's what I would do. I would pollute the food system with chemicals and toxins and things that lower optimal brain function. Okay? Check, check, check. Our food system is absolutely polluted with all kinds of poisons and toxins and additives and things that are completely unnecessary and totally toxic, especially to the brain, and to neurotoxins die in the food, especially children's food, artificial flavors, preservatives, enriching with synthetic vitamins and synthetic substances, iron, for example, and with absolutely no regard to nutritional science, but just putting the fluoride in the water has never been proven to make teeth stronger. This is a great example of what I talked about with the cutting the ends of the ham off. We all just know that fluoride makes your teeth strong, right? Like, you can have cavities if you don't have fluoride, if you don't have fluoride in your teeth. Well, that's never been proven. I want somebody on this podcast to find any study that's actually proven that fluoride prevents cavities. That's just what we do, right? We put fluoride on teeth. We put fluoride in toothpaste. It's what the American Academy of Dentists or whatever says to do, and so that's what we do. An example of this is I took my 6-pounder to the vet when she was brand new, and the vet wanted to give her a rabies shot, obviously. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but my question for the vet was, do you have a different dose for a 6-pounder than you do for a 100-pound Mastiff? Do you have a different shot, a different dose, a different size, a different measurement for a 6-pound poodle than you do a 100-pound Mastiff? And she just looked at me like glazed over, and she said, no, we give every dog the same shot. And I was like, well, does that make sense? Because my dog is 6 pounds and that dog's 100 pounds. So it feels like that would be overkill, like too much for a 6-pounder if it was effective for a 100-pounder. And her response was, well, the, whatever Society of Veterinarians, I don't know what that governing organization is, but that's their recommendation. Well, I don't care. I don't give a crap what the organization's recommendation is. What is the science behind it? Has anybody applied critical thought to this? Or is there just an agenda at play? Or are we working on even outmoded information? So this is what I'm talking about. It's just like not just accepting the status quo because, that's what the organization said, or that's what the expert on TV said, or that's what my mom did, or whatever, but to really, really think of this through. So if you think about fluoride, for instance, to kind of close that loop, it's a neurotoxin. It's extremely toxic to the human brain. And of course, it's in safe amounts. But how much is a safe amount of a halogen that's a medication that's poisonous, that's toxic? And why are they medicating us in our drinking water without our consent? Have you ever thought about this? Fluoride is a medication. They're putting medicine into your drinking water, with your showering water. It goes in through your skin, your bathing water. Have you ever thought about these things? This is my point in the whole social programming conversation. So I would make the poisonous food that we talked about. I put poison in food, fast food, processed food, and I would make that food, the poisonous food, really cheap and easy to obtain, whereas the fresh food, the organic food, the food that was close to its original form, is more expensive, and it takes a lot more work, and it takes a lot more effort to not only obtain it. And in some places in the United States, in food deserts, you can't even get it. You can't obtain it at all. Hostess Twinkies, no problem. Ding Dongs, no problem. Bag of chips, easy. Microwave burrito or McDonald's on every corner, but you can't get an apple or you can't get a bundle of kale. And you probably wouldn't know what to do with it if you did, because your mom has been giving you TV dinners and her mom gave her TV dinners. So you see how this works to sort of trickle down and play the long game and really dismantle a society from the inside out. I would also, if I was one of these, people who wanted to engineer society, I would engineer a media system that constantly makes people feel inferior and unsatisfied, so that they buy crap and eat and drink and smoke crap that makes them numb to the pain of their unrealized dreams and desires. I would use schools to condition children to be good, obedient, not critical thinkers, but workers or cogs in the corporate wheel that never builds individual wealth, but rather centralizes the money and power at the top of a few really large corporations. I would have people so busy trying to survive that they didn't have any bandwidth to even ask these questions that we're talking about, or contemplate their worth or their purpose, or even expend the mental calories that it takes to think critically. I would promote a religious system that glorifies being poor, sick, and suffering. I'm not going to touch that one right now. I'll get into that on my series on spirituality. But I think you're getting the picture. Our society is not set up for human thriving. Is that intentional? Can we entertain the possibility that it's intentional? And can we use that cognitive dissonance to sort of agitate a, a sense that we need to wake up and pay attention and choose differently? And the great thing is that if you feel trapped, if you feel hopeless, I sure did at one point, but you can change it anytime by just changing your mind and elevating your standards and choosing to do the work of going inside and healing the patterns that have been fed to you over a lifetime, and starting little by little, choosing differently based on self-awareness and ultimately on consciousness. All right, my friends, that is it for episode number 28 of the Rise to Reign podcast. Thank you so much for listening. This concludes our series on social engineering. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope it made you think. I'll see you next week.